Hey everyone, Cahlen here, and in this video I'm going to be showing you my new little toy, this. So this is an infrared illuminator. It's designed for infrared cameras, so it works just like a flash. You see, you slide this onto the top of the camera, it sits on, you turn it on, it puts out a field of red infrared light at night in the dark where you can't really see it. Actually, you can see a little bit because of the frequency that this is at, but it is in the infrared, right? If we were to go a little bit above, then you would see it very clearly. But like if I turn this on right now, it's on all the way, you can't see anything. But if we were in a dark room, you would see a faint red light. So basically, infrared light is used for all kinds of things when it comes to the health of the human body. It's hugely powerful. There's a lot of research on it. It's largely safe with some exceptions, which I will talk about. And it can be a little bit expensive and bulky because of how, there's lots of different ways that you can do infrared, right? You can have infrared saunas, you can have infrared blankets, you can have these big like towers of infrared, of LED lights, which are in the infrared spectrum, which you stand in front of, and I used to have something like that, but it's not really, none of that's really feasible for my situation because of cost, and also because I can't carry that stuff in my backpack. So this is designed not for healing, but the LEDs in here are at about 850 nanometers, which is one of the most studied frequencies. It's the more penetrating, it goes deeper down into the tissue. It can basically reach farther than skin level, right? And if we go back up to about 600, right in the 650 range, where we're getting closer to actually visible red light. And then when we go down into that's going to be more surface level. It's not going to penetrate as much. That's more useful for certain things on surface level, like skincare and growing hair back if you have alopecia and that type of stuff. But the 850 and deeper, that stuff goes down into the ligaments and the bones and the bloodstream and all kinds of stuff like that below the surface of the skin. So anyways, you can get, this is basically not any different than any of those really expensive devices. They all use LEDs just like this. These LEDs aren't of a different quality. They do the exact same thing. They're of the same frequency. So basically this is probably less than 30 bucks. I don't remember how much it was, but I'm pretty sure it was less than 30 bucks. And it charges with USB, right? So I just plug this into my solar e-bike, and I have it sitting there right next to my bed, so I use it in the morning and before I go to bed on various parts of my body. And yeah, I mean, this is available and people don't even know about it. And when we think about things like Star Trek, you know, they got these little machines and someone's cut up and they go, and the thing heals up. Like, that's a bit of an extreme representation of what red light therapy and infrared therapy can do. But it's pretty much the same thing. It's just actually it happens at a kind of a slower pace. And we probably could get this technology closer to that point, you know, with using different types of frequencies. Also, you know, we learn things about it, like, for example, strobing, like not just having the steady light, but actually kind of flashing it actually improves the health benefits. So basically tuning things like that, I think we can probably get this to a point in the future where, you know, it really is almost to the Star Trek level of healing capability. Okay, so let's talk about how infrared works. And there's basically, infrared in research has been shown to be useful for basically a huge amount of things, and things which aren't really related to each other. And in my mind, this is largely due to the fact that it gives energy to the body, right? Infrared light, heat, basically, so, you know, basically heat would be a little bit lower. We generally consider heat to be lower, but infrared is the frequency of the electromagnetic spectrum that the body uses for absorbing and storing certain types of energy. Okay, so and then higher up in the electromagnetic spectrum, down up into UV and stuff like that, it's more about signaling and sending information. Okay, so that's how the body uses those frequencies more. So our body is wired, the entire body is basically meant to run and be communicated with, to basically interact with the outside world through its light sensing. And basically everything is about light for the body. Now, to the point, and I would go as far, because I do know people who are almost to this point, that you can actually live off of light. Like, you don't actually need to eat very much food. And of course, that would take you a very long time to adapt to that, and there are, there's a lot to say about that. It's not something you can just jump right into, but it is something that can be done, and I've met people who do this. So anyways, it gives energy through a couple of different ways. Okay, so first of all is through structured water. Okay, so one of the ways that our body stores energy is it forms a battery. And a battery is basically just a thing which has 2 points, right? And they have a different charge, and they're not connected to each other. But if they were to get connected to each other, they would want to balance each other out, and so energy would flow, and then you harvest that energy, that flowing energy between the 2 points to do whatever you want to do, to light a light bulb or to run an electric car. So the body creates a battery using something called structured water. So water has all kinds of things in it, right? And our body has lots of water in it. And inside of water is all kinds of different things, salts and metals and all these kinds of things. And these things are used by the body to basically run the whole system, right? It's basically the working of moving these different charged things back and forth across the cell membrane, right? That's how neurons fire and all this type of stuff. So anyways, the water has all of these things in it. Now, when you add infrared light, heat energy, if you go down to certain levels, but there's certain spectrums which do this more strongly. When you add that to water, which has all kinds of things, soluted, there are things which are soluble, which are in the water. I don't know what the word for that would be. Anyway, so if you bombard it with red light, it creates a kind of a different phase of water, right? We think there's ice and there's water and there's steam, but there's kind of in water, the liquid form has its own 2 different stages. So structured water is one of these stages, and it basically creates kind of a crystalline gel-like structure which pushes all of the things which are soluted inside of them out. Okay, so now you got this part of the water which is pure and structured and crystallized because it's storing energy in it, right? It needs a little bit of energy in order to hold that shape, and the more energy you add, the more this part of the water can get, and then it pushes all those things out, and that increases the difference in energy between these 2 points, because it's not just now this has nothing and this has all the ones that it had before. This has nothing, and all of the things that it had are now also pushed into the other one, so it further increases the differences. So you've got a battery here, and that's basically one of the ways the body stores energy. Okay, so that's what this does, and that's also what the sun does, and actually, to be honest, that's the best way to do this, except that you have to be worried about other things like overexposure, which also you have to be worried about with this. So anyways, the sun's free. This, something like this does have benefits because you can target to a certain problem area. So the other way that it produces energy is by interacting with the mitochondrial system. So mitochondria are basically like little microbes. They used to be theoretically, a long time ago, they were bacteria which basically became symbiotic with other types of cells, got inside, and basically they started to work together, and then they formed things like us, right? That's the scientific theory. I'm not sure I buy into that. In the very least, they are similar to bacteria in how they kind of operate, and all of the cells in your body, most of the cells in your body, almost all of the cells in your body, have mitochondria in them. Some of them have thousands and thousands and thousands of mitochondria. And the mitochondria are basically kind of light creatures. They thrive on light. They communicate with each other using light. They do communicate with each other. Bacteria communicate with each other when they get into communities, and so do mitochondria. And they also interact. They understand what's going on in the environment based on the light. They know when it's morning, because assuming you're living in a way where you're getting morning sunlight and also not having artificial light after sunset, that's how the mitochondria know what to be doing at any given time, right? So basically, light is a really big thing for them, and infrared is a source of energy, and it interacts with them in a way which increases their ability to produce ATP, which is another energy unit of the body. ATP is just basically something we turn fat. When we eat fat, we can turn that into ATP. When we eat sugar, we can turn that into ATP. And when we shine light on ourselves, we can also create ATP. So people think, well, you can't really get energy from light. Well, yes, you can. So there's all kinds of other benefits to red light therapy. I'm going to talk about collagen synthesis and how that's useful for wound healing and muscle building, all kinds of things like that. But I want to say first that basically the way that I look at things is that the reason why it has all these benefits is primarily because of the first thing, the thing that I just talked to you about, is that it gives the body energy. And I think that's the same reason why chlorine dioxide works, is because it's a very, very strong oxygen donor. It basically floods the body with oxygen, and we know that things that do that, like ozone therapy and stuff like that, are really, really helpful to the body. So basically just giving the body energy, especially, you know, like in a spot that may be having trouble, is really, really helpful and will cause everything to get better, you know. And that may be the only explanation, right? There probably are other explanations, especially with the collagen thing, but in the way that I think, you know, ultimately I just think I'm giving the body energy, and that's going to make everything better. Okay, so anyways, collagen is basically it's a protein. It's what basically all of much of your body is made of: your skin, your hair, your fingernails, your bones, your ligament, all this type of stuff. Collagen is what those things are made up of. And so if you're in a situation where you're trying to build or to heal from something, you want more collagen creation. Okay, especially in that specific area. So you can use infrared light to stimulate collagen synthesis at a specific location using something like this. So let's say I had a big wound on my hand, right? I'm going to put infrared light on it, and I'd probably do the 600-ish, because it's on the surface, right? I'm not trying to penetrate here. But let's say you got something like me where my shoulder, you know, is severely busted right now. And this is actually why I bought this thing. I'm like, this thing is not getting better. I need to actually go to serious lengths here. So anyways, basically, I need to reach deeper down. So this is in the kind of mid 800s. So that's going to go down into all of that and start basically signaling the body to increase collagen synthesis. And it's also useful for wound healing and things like that for lots of other reasons. It's anti-inflammation. Sometimes inflammation is important in the wound healing process, largely for, you know, kind of antimicrobial purposes for external cuts and stuff like that. But it can be a hindrance, especially if it's there for a long period of time when you're trying to heal from kind of a severe internal injury. So this reduces inflammation. It also reduces pain, right? People who are, you know, disabilitated, I feel like I'm screwing up words all day today. So they can't do things because they're so in pain, like back pain and things like that. Infrared actually makes it so that they can go back to doing what they were doing, right? And it's probably not just the fact that it's reducing the pain, it's probably the fact that it's actually healing the situation. So it can also be used for healing neurology, and also or just building up your neurology. But this is kind of getting in more of the dangerous area of things, right? Okay, so for example, I could turn this on and I could put this on a part of my brain, and that's going to do all kinds of things, and it's going to do it really quickly. And it's going to be beneficial, assuming I don't leave it there too long. If you leave it there too long, which too long is like more than a minute, right? This stuff is, I'm serious, this stuff is really strong and really dangerous. Don't just leave it sitting on your head for a half an hour while you take a nap, right? You might wake up and things don't work anymore, right? There's an anecdotal story. Dave Asprey, you know, the guy who sort of created biohacking, or at least coined the term, he has a story where he was trying to use it on his language centers of his brain, which is a little bit in front of the ear here, and he left it on there for like 4 minutes. 4 minutes. And for the next, I think like 8 hours, every time he tried to talk, it came out. It was like he had something he wanted to say, and he would start to say it, but when his muscles were moving and saying the things, it just was gobbledygook, complete and total nonsense for hours upon end, right? And that went away, and he's totally fine, but let's say he'd done half an hour instead of 4 minutes, right? And seriously, if he'd had that even in the wrong place for 4 minutes, that could be a problem. So this is something you have to be very careful about, right? You can supercharge your brain. You can fix your brain. Like, you may have all kinds of issues. Certain parts of your brain may not be getting really good blood flow, or stuff like that, or the corpus callosum, which connects the two hemispheres, may not have very good connections. You can improve it by putting that there, but you don't want to do it for very long, All right, so you got to be really careful here, okay? So other things that can happen using this is, which are not so good, is it can burn you, right? These things get really hot, so it can burn you that way, but also after a long period of time. Like, you'd have to leave this on for probably an hour before it got to the point where if I touched it, it would burn me, okay? So, but also there are kinds which are designed, they're kind of like cold. They're designed not to heat up, but they still burn you because of and they burn you in a different way. It's more like, because of how I was telling you, it is putting energy into the body. Those cells can get overloaded with energy and be burned in that way, and you can get like 3rd-degree burns through this. So, you know, but it would take many hours probably, or probably like at least, you know, a cycle of sleep before you were burned by a cold light therapy device that way. But, you know, it is something that you have to be concerned about. Another thing you may want to be concerned about is, you know, I think these things, it's a little unclear, but bacteria and cancer cells probably like this in certain circumstances. In certain circumstances, it will kill bacteria. In others, I think it's probably going to be beneficial for them, just like it's beneficial for your cells. Same goes for cancer, okay? So I wouldn't use this on a tumor thinking that it's going to help the situation, because it might do the opposite. So anyways, that's my rundown on infrared light therapy. They also call it something called LLLT, which used to stand for low level laser therapy, but now stands for low level light therapy or something like that, because they found that LEDs are, you know, basically as good as a laser, and so they had to change the word to not just include lasers. Okay, so anyways, that's the rundown on that and this thing, and I totally recommend getting this. This thing is totally awesome, and I'm definitely noticing the differences, right? I'm not just using it for my shoulder, I'm also currently using it on my kind of chakra. I don't think of it as the chakra system. It's like the body's energy system, the main channels, the channel that goes from basically the bottom of your, you know, in between your genitals and your anus, right? That's kind of the bottom chakra there, and energy goes up the spine and it comes back down and goes down, and there's this loop. It's called the microcosmic orbit. Basically, that's something I've been working on for a long time, but I'm enhancing the circuit by basically starting this light down there, leaving it there for 30 seconds to a minute, moving it, you know, a little bit, you know, enough that I'm basically onto another patch of skin, and just continuing along until I get around the entire way. And I did that this morning for the first time, a full circuit, and I notice a difference in how that energy, it feels full, and there's almost like a throbbing of energy, you know, across that entire circuit, which makes me feel good and happy and energetic. So that's an experimental thing. There's no research on that. So, you know, and you do have to be careful, right? You can blow out energy centers, like acupuncture points are all about moving energy. You can use lasers on acupuncture points the same way that you use needles. So you can blow out these things, so you got to be careful, right? I'm using this on major energy circuits, big ones, right? When I'm talking about what I'm doing this morning, like the spine, is a lot of energy flows through there, so it's harder to blow out the circuit than if I'm working on a minute little circuit or something that's like in a part of my, you know, so shining a laser on that for an hour might not be a good idea, right? So anyways, I'll see you guys later. Thanks for watching. If you like this video, please consider sharing it. If you'd like to help me out in a more substantial way, you can learn how to do so at cahlen.org/gift. And if you'd like to have a one-on-one conversation with me, whether publicly or privately, you can learn how to do so at cahlen.org/one-on-one. Thanks again for watching.